So, ImAlexx, am I right? Alex Emslie basically had his career blown up by an absolutely scathing allegation in Google Doc. If you haven't seen, it's honestly just absolutely ridiculous and horrible. It's also very funny. The entire thing is littered with what I can only describe as villain monologues with some of the most misogynistic language I've ever seen someone use to their partner. In short, he was accused of abuse by his ex, and we have everything from clips where he threatens to bash her head in with a brick, to calling her a dumb whore, the C word, and so much more. Literally, there's video evidence of him doing this, which is really funny. Apparently, he only joins calls with face cam on, and now that I think about it, yeah, he only did that way back when, too. So this has been like a habit of his. He just does that. I literally can't cover most of it here because the details in the document get you demonetized, but I did cover it on stream. Fun part about all this is that I used to roll in Alex's crew, basically, or people adjacent to his crew. I talk about it pretty openly now, but yep, I was a part of the Reddit crew, which Alex was not a member of per se, but he was friendly with us and dated one of the members at one point. I'm mainly doing this video just to have my dog's day, really. I'm barely worth a mention, but I do partially blame him for how things happened and things in the past for me. He is most certainly a person deserving of the shit he's getting now, and I can't help but feel incredibly righteous about it. Everything from former E-Boy staff to exes like King Ani have spoken out, and for the very least, hopefully this will demystify some of the stuff and allow me some personal closure, because it's been 5 years, and frankly, I haven't had closure. Anyway, I don't like the guy. However, he had this bombshell of allegations, so, you know, I'm not really surprised. He was never really a great person. So, let's get into it. Over the years, even by his collaborators, Alex got the reputation of being the guy you don't tell things to because he'll tell everyone. And when he does tell people things, he brings it to the next level. You know, a game of telephone. Things would change. I was constantly told personally by other YouTubers and friends to not share anything with him that I wouldn't want everybody to know. And this stayed the same when I got older. The dude was always difficult to work with and was the epitome of dysfunctional adult Zoomer. For example, some of the texts mentioned how Alex was patting himself on the back for doing normal housework chores, to which his ex replies, "That's living." It was the same way back when Alex was just as messy, right? He'd never changed. That's just who he is. He would chronically struggle with having to shave, which is one of those strange moments that always stuck with me, and is also why his mustache constantly has cuts on it. The guy was always very nice when speaking to you if you were a creator, but personally, it never really felt real to me. He's corporate, and don't get me wrong, I can be that guy too. But just, he struggled to talk about anything but YouTube. It was only YouTube and nothing else. And you know, to be honest, when you get into the higher tiers of YouTube, your colleagues discuss work a lot more. But seriously, he just struggled to talk about anything else. Maybe soccer and Star Wars, but that's it. I do remember him very much liking Star Wars. And that leaked DM with his ex mentioning a Star Wars event. It wasn't a movie. I believe it was a cross-promotional tie-in thing. I have something that I need to mention about the behind-the-scenes business of this all. In America, if you're a YouTuber of his size, no one cares. But if you're a country like England, you kind of become a niche celebrity. So that's basically what he had become. I actually think I can pinpoint why he's such a freak in those DMs, though. I know lots of his own personal history and who he was as a person growing up. You know, people just aren't evil, but it makes sense that he's a dick to his partner without getting into details. I'm not surprised based on the things I was either told by Alex or people that were very close to Alex that worked on various projects with him when we were teens. Anyway, the big elephant in the room is the Slazo story, which since that time, it's kind of gotten mythologized by commentary discussion and drama tubers. So I'm not necessarily pouring cold water on it. I just want to give you a perspective as a character who was there at the time, just silently watching everything unfold. I'm certain if you ask each of the parties who spoke, they'll give some varying different stories based on their experiences, but I think these are things that are all generally agreeable, and I have other people who were there at the time who can help corroborate these things as well. It's just something that has come up in various discussions I've had when talking with the commentary people who have been, one, very nice and are actually really good people. It's surprising how much they hated people like Turkey Tom when Tom is just fine in real life. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this Slazo story from my perspective, being there at the time as things were unfolding. I was always a bit closer with commentary than the rest of the Reddit crew. Many of them would cut their teeth in commentary and would leave to make new content. I kept my mouth shut when it all went public and just blew up over the course of VidCon, because it did happen during VidCon. So a lot of it did happen in person. I always had done my own thing, but I had reaped the reward of being friends with all these successful people in these group channels. So before VidCon, Che, the girl who accused Slazo, approached a number of my friends, to my knowledge. Basically, it was a tale of woe about a mutual in the space, Slazo. Now, one of the things that gets mythologized is the closeness of Slazo to the people that were being very openly antagonistic against him, right? They weren't necessarily close friends with him. I would just call them workplace acquaintances. For example, people in the Reddit crew had worked together with Slazo, but he wasn't necessarily in the group. He wasn't one of the Australian friends that were in the group. He was always off doing his own thing. He didn't game with us. He didn't spend time with us. He was not really a friend, and that is a part of the story that gets turned into like these people got together and backstabbed a friend. That's not true. He may have been personally friends with some of them, but not all of them. However, Alex did promote himself as one, or did say that he was one. So Che comes and asks for help from these YouTubers that she knew or was friendly with from dating Slazo at a time, right? And she comes to them and says, I want you guys to help me form a statement. At the time, I don't think anybody was older than 25, but I could be wrong. That was 2019, so I'm recalling very old stuff. They basically gave her advice on how to make this statement, as if they have any experience in this. They don't, by the way. And so that's where the group chat was formed, to my knowledge. Alex ended up being one of the people to hear about it, and he was quote-unquote friends with Slazo and had him in his apartment. Now, this Che girl, she had fabricated a lot, and basically used the goodwill that she had made with people to get this whole thing off the ground. In reality, nobody involved in it should have been involved in it in the first place. But she basically abused her goodwill to get everybody to go along with it. Me personally, I hope this young lady gets hit by a bus because she got caught doing this and then sprinted away from all of this as if she doesn't have any responsibility after doing all this ridiculous shit. So Che's statement comes out and things got really crazy really fast. Even before Slazo made his statement, people were calling bullshit because of ImAlexx having involvement in it, which is reasonable because I'll get into that. I distinctly remember this scene, and yes, it was like the Situation Room, and this was happening in real life. Yes, it was, and the amount of people sitting in there watching this occur was insane. So somebody Chromecast a Turkey Tom video to the TV, which at the time, Tom was 16 years old. So I hope this helps you realize how old this stuff is now. Now, the video had some inaccuracies, generally about people's relationships to one another, but the behind-the-scenes stuff was that nobody was really doing the journalism thing in commentary yet, but it was ultimately a scathing takedown of what had occurred so far. Moreover, Alex had previously accused a YouTuber known as Zaptai of being a pedo and being a sociopath. Alex had made rude remarks about Tommy C being a pedo as well, which he is not, and to my knowledge, Zaptai also isn't either. But this was just an example of Alex making his reputation of being this guy who's always surrounded by these, well, sex pests and having to pick up the pieces of their monstrous behavior. Now, it would have been really easy if you were going to make a video about the Reddit crew and Alex all teaming up together to go take down Slazo. And yeah, ostensibly, that's what they did. They did team up. But I think a lot of people think it comes from like a weird, like, you know, Caesar et tu Brutus stab in the back thing, which it really wasn't. So to understand the landscape here of what was really, like, from my perspective, what was going on, commentary then isn't what it is now. Everyone watching that video of Tom's that day was really prime commentary video material. Not because anyone was bad per se, but because it was Reddit content. That was a huge problem at the time. It was seen as lazy and just kind of content farming, including one guy in the group who used to do commentary and got so many like accusations of being lazy about his videos. But ultimately, a lot of the commentary was like, Pickle Rick is cringe or Jake Paul sucks, which, I mean, it's a little ridiculous to rake someone over for that now. It wouldn't happen now. There's bigger fish to fry, right? Anyway, that's the kind of people who were sitting in the room at the time. But Alex would be hanging around with us from time to time while we were there in California. And he would always gossip. He was a big gossiper. I remember being told countless stories at Disney, being hungover from drinking vodka and cereal the night before. This is also when I affectionately called quite Spider-Man and kissed him on the forehead to give you a time reference for when this was happening. Anyway, I'm standing in line, and over the course of that conversation as we stand in line, just chewing the fat, Alex was passionately telling stories about a man that he thought Slazo was. Alex had known about this for a bit, and he had basically been spinning a yarn to anybody who would listen. I distinctly remember being told how much of a sexual deviant the guy is by Alex as we waited in line, which in hindsight was just a story about how the guy liked feet, but Alex seemed to bring it up a notch and craft this narrative about him wanting to, like, get off at people's feet in an apartment. It was very strange. I'm paraphrasing, of course. This is something that happened a long time ago. It's hard not to remember these anecdotes. Alex would go to basically anybody and tell stories all the fucking time. In fact, if I had to describe how Alex would tell these stories about Slazo to people in person, he would kind of reframe whatever was happening as if he was a victim of Slazo, basically in every story I had heard. Now, at the time, these were my friends. I believe Slazo was this bad boyfriend. I think most people would be inclined to believe their friends. That's natural, right? Plus, shit was getting wild, so you're going to go into your little camps and not want to listen to anybody else. We were holding a VidCon meetup, and I remember us getting threats at the time, and frankly, someone could have just come and kill us. But the rape stuff Alex was talking about, which he did talk about that a lot in many of the stories he told people, I wasn't necessarily sure with. I had tried to keep my nose out of it despite standing around and being told these things. Che also told something similar to my knowledge, but it was with Alex that there were specific details, and like details of things like Slazo admitting guilt to Alex and all these things, and Alex not knowing what to do and being emotionally overwhelmed, and it was really, really just dramatic storytelling he was doing. So there was a YouTuber party that was going on, and I think it was hosted by Rusty Cage and a few others. There were a lot of people there, right? But, you know, all these things are kind of like no phones type of events. Boogie showed up when he was a not disaster. I think this is around a time when he was thinking about killing himself. Quackity was there because at the time he was friends with us. And, you know, I'm not naming any more names for sanity's sake, but it was a decent gathering, right? Alex pulls up to this party in the ugliest thing I've ever seen. You know, he had this newfound wealth, and he had lost all taste in the course of that. And he was wearing very pricey streetwear at the time. In this case, it was Gucci. So I was sitting outside by a pool on a lounge chair. I was illuminated by one of these outdoor backyard lights. And past the chairs was this pool where two large, round, rotund YouTubers were swimming along in it. I remember Boogie doing one of those, like, he just kind of like went backwards into the pool and made a humongous splash because he's a fat guy, right? So I had walked out back with my friend from the Reddit crew, and we sat down on lounge chairs as we talked to another friend who is older and wiser and just has a better grasp on social situations, right? This is a guy who, like, everybody knows, right? You could call him like a mayor type character. Everybody knows him and loves him, but I'm not naming him for the sake of, you know, making him be in a position where he has to give his piece, right? So Alex comes out and he joins this discussion, and he's wearing European-styled shorts a la Legally Blonde with this big baggy Gucci sweater with the sequined tiger. It's like green, right? And here he tells this friend of ours who's cool with the commentary people his story about Slazo, which is a totally different story than the ones I heard previously. How he and Slazo were like really close friends, and Slazo had essayed this girl, and that these people just don't get the situation like he does because he was there and he's talked to both sides, blah, 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 right? I remember making an offhand comment as well about his ugly sweater, but primarily I just listened to how broken up Alex is that another one of his friends was a sex pest, with the prior one being Zaptai. So the friend told him a alternative view of things, but for Alex, it didn't work. He didn't really want to hear it, right? So a little bit after that party happens, I had flown from LA to Colorado, where things continued to escalate. Because once I got to Colorado, a little bit halfway into that trip, the Slazo video came out, his response, which was phenomenal, right? Now, things had become an entire argument in the place I was at the time. Depending on who you trusted, Che with Alex poisoning the well even more is where you would line up on basically what side you were on, right? And this was happening like in private now. So Alex being so personally involved with this put a majority of the people off this whole thing, and they had apologized and, you know, didn't want to bother with it. But it was funny because when Slazo's video came out, Che like almost immediately bounced. It was like a day or two of her being radio silent. I believe it was King Anna at the time who had asked, hey, are you going to make a video response? Like, you need to address these things, blah, blah, blah. And then she just vanished, right? Shortly after this, I remember Hyojin attempted suicide, which, you know, is a whole can of fucking worms that I'm not getting into now, but I remember that very clearly. There was like a very big, like, people were very broken up about what was going on, right? Now, one of the people who was involved in this is King Ani, who I've mentioned before. She obviously made a post about Alex, but their relationship with him, yeah, I knew about that stuff. I knew about how he acted behind the scenes. I knew the guy was career focused. I can vouch for that. I knew he was gross, messy, and uncaring. At the time, I knew Anna was close with Che, and I trusted her for a while up until it turned out Che was lying. His mere presence in this, though, Alex, being anywhere near my friend group, caused so much needless drama. Basically, one person would tell the story of Che, and then Alex would tell a completely different story that would completely make the thing even worse than it was before. He would constantly try to get into people's business, or constantly try to get them into business, literally. He could never just be friends with people. It always had to be like a give and take situation. That was one of the more ridiculous things, where everything had to be framed as workplace for him. And that I personally find kind of deplorable. I actually like to just hang out with people like a normal fucking person. The frustrating part about Alex is that he would never take responsibility for anything, never back down on anything. And for the most part, for most of his career, it allowed him to get away with so much. Basically, everybody had known a lot about Alex's reputation and personality, especially by the end of the Slazo thing. Basically, everybody I knew had cut off Alex completely after the Slazo thing, because they were so frustrated with how much he pushed it and how much he changed the story and how much he just kept running with it, right? Alex's pot stirring is ridiculous and well known. Everyone knew about it. Literally everybody. If you were working with Alex or you were friends with Alex, you knew about his reputation, especially at the end of this Lazo stuff. There's no fucking way that some of these guys are like, wow, I can't believe that this is coming out of nowhere. Like, they had no fucking idea. I seriously don't believe that, right? Maybe it's because it's Alex's own bullshit that he's not going around sharing it with people. That's always a possibility. But the reality is that if you were friends with Alex, you were constantly risking the possibility that he would turn around in the night and just say some ridiculous shit about you because you shared some piece of vulnerable information with him. And for some reason, he just can't keep it quiet. He is just absolutely the kind of person who's like, oh, I don't like being in drama, and is always in drama. He would do it constantly. And yeah, the thing about his camera being on all the time is true. Every time I had gotten in a call with him, ever since the Slazo stuff on, he had always had his camera on. It could just be like a normal shooting the shit conversation with somebody that I was close with. They'd be like, oh, Alex want to join? And I'd be like, sure, whatever, I'm cool with the guy, right? And he would join, and he would always have his fucking camera on. Like, not everybody has their camera on in Discord. And then obviously, you know, because you're YouTubers, you feel, you know, obligated to turn it on, so you just would. It was very strange. It was a really weird thing. The guy was strange, didn't take care of himself well at all, was a complete mess of a human being, constantly did not like him. I thought he was up his own ass all the time. And personally, for me, I understand that it's like, you know, don't get me wrong, I feel bad for what happened to Slazo. I get it. I do put a lot of responsibility of what happened with my friend group on Alex. I know some people grow up, they move on, right? But I was very pissed with how he acted and what he did. Some other things too, right? Obviously, but he was a big part of that. And I am so fucking grateful that this is happening, right? Like, I couldn't cover this without just being like, I can't stand the guy. Because I do blame him for a lot of that, and a lot of the time after that, which I've talked about before, which if you're just somebody who's like coming in for the drama, after that I kind of like cut myself off from everybody, and there's nothing more painful than like if you ever been alone in a crowded room, and that's kind of what my life felt like for a really long time. And I do put a lot of the blame on Alex. So there's that. So fuck him and his pot stirring bullshit. People knew about it. People fucking knew about it. I'm like, I read these posts from the guys who are like, well, make sure to stand with Alex. Dude, you fucking knew how completely dysfunctional and rude the guy was. What are you fucking talking about? Ugh, God, I'm so glad this happened. I'm so glad. There's other stuff too about Alex, but that's the stuff that I think everybody wants to know about. And I do think a lot of it had kind of morphed into its own thing. So hopefully this lends some context to what was happening around that time. And yeah, that's a rest in peace. Who knows? Maybe he'll have an amazing response. I'm not starting a bridge with him. I don't fuck him.